Hi, Donna.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I want to welcome all to Halen House's Healing Focus Educational Talk for December. And I want to welcome everyone that is watching or listening live today, as well as the anyone watching the replay. And we appreciate you joining us today for this this talk on women's circles and women groupings. I am Maria Cookson and Cheryl Mills of Halen House. And for those who are new to Halen House, and this series, Halen House is a nonprofit in Central Oregon whose mission is to provide educational tools, resources, and support for healing root causes and effects of trauma. We believe in the possibilities of healing the mind, body, and spirit to create health, resilience, and wholeness in a person and in their life. Through our Healing Focus series videos, we want to share some of the wide range of options in the holistic and complementary areas of health and wellness, along with spotlighting practitioners locally and regionally who use and practice these modalities to create healthy tools and resources for themselves and the clients they serve. At Halen House, we know that there are 6 areas in a person's life which can be sticky or become stuck areas that affect their health, especially when feeling the effects of trauma. These areas are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, nutritional, and social. So when we can work with one or more of these areas at a time, we can shift our being and perspective into being a more balanced and whole person who's built and created resiliency to lessen these effects that come from trauma or other challenges in our life. So I will now pass to Cheryl Mills to talk about our speaker of the month, Willow Merchant of Merging Hearts Collective.
Thanks, Maria, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your interest in this particular subject, and I notice it's all women. So, yay. A little bit about Willow. Over the last 25 years, she's had the privilege of walking with over 10,000 women through their childbearing years. Willow spiritually midwives families through emergence as vibrant, loving beings to nurture the next generation. Her gift is honoring and empowering families on their journey around parenthood with kindness, compassion, and ultimately healing. Willow is working to change the conversation by witnessing the experience, holding space, and asking powerful questions to coach around personal growth and development. Willow helps building families cultivate community by supporting heart-centered care and redefining the way we are in relationship with one another. Willow is the founder of Emerging Hearts Collective. Willow holds a Master of Science in Nursing and Family Nurse Practitioner, intergenerational board certified lactation consultant, and has completed multiple certifications, including trauma-informed care and alternative healing modalities to support her clients. She guides women from all walks of life, celebrating and learning. You can connect with Willow through emergingheartscollective.com, and her email is just willow@emergingheartscollective.com. So welcome, Willow. We will let you just take it away. How would you like to field questions, as they come up or towards the end?
We can have as they come up. I'm pretty unstructured. So as I said, unprepared / unstructured. Figure my passion for these subjects will carry through. So just as we go, I think it's wonderful to kind of keep it casual. So either in the chat or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's great. So thank
Fabulous.
you for being here, and thank you for spending some time to hear about what's happening in our community around supporting women and supporting people as they move into sort of the next phase of their lives, whatever that may be. This is an area that has really risen up for me over the years. I've been a nurse for 26 years, and the bulk of my work has really been around birth and childbearing and families growing and people and experiences that may be sort of externally really joyful experiences that come with a lot of internal struggle and a lot of internal conflict. And so I've really been able to bear witness to this experience that with people as they move through it and some of the challenges that surround that. So that's what my professional life has looked like. I I support people through coaching from sort of a health and wellness perspective initially, and then that sort of has moved into more of a life alignment perspective. But what I'm hoping to talk about some today is the way in which I get to hold space for people in our community with Women's Circle. So, while for me, where since I first sat in circle with women, but for me, this was a really life-changing experience in that it was the first place where I really felt like I was seen and held, and I could show up and be messy and show up in all my stuff. And people were like, dude, it was the first place where like I heard my story being told by the women around me. And I saw my own, yeah, showing up for other people. I grew up in a family that was all about putting the best face forward, no matter what was happening behind closed doors. And that was really important. And that was really communicated to myself and my siblings. And so I'd always sort of had that. Like you have one persona that's your outward persona, and you have one persona that's who you really are. And for me, that created this big internal conflict, right? Like I've always been this black sheep. I've always been this person who didn't quite fit. And then when I started being held in circle, I really felt like I was able to merge those two pieces of myself. And so, um, because I have gained so much personally and I've seen so many beautiful shifts happening for other people, this is what has really guided me to being an embodied facilitator for Circle and supporting women in this way, right? So when we think about trauma and we think about our lived experiences, there's really the big pieces that rise up is that little person inside of us just wants to belong, right? Like we're all need connection and belonging. This is a really big theme. And I found that as I was working with women one-on-one, this was a theme that kept coming up. It's like connection and belonging. Like I need a tribe, I need my people. Like I don't have my people and I feel unsupported. And then COVID hit. And then even more so, people became more and more isolated. And with this big thing of social media, it's like we have these superficial connections. Do we have places where we can just be and we can just show up? And I found through my professional work as a nurse and as a nurse practitioner that that was also something that really resonated for me that I was hearing again and again. People didn't have people, they didn't have those confidants, right? And they really needed that outside of family, outside of a partnership, outside of their children. And so that's really dove into circles. So women have always circled. It's primal. I mean, it is what women do. Women have circled around birth and death and cooking and sewing and storytelling and bleeding. Like women have always done this. Um, and as we've become more and more industrialized and more secularized, there's been the rise of the single family home, a decrease in intergenerational living. We've really lost the naturally created spaces for women to gather and for women to circle. Um, And so we have to create this for ourselves. And I really come from this place of like, we have to do better. We have to do better for our girls and our young moms and women going through the transitions into wise woman phase, right? And like, we have to do better than we've been doing because we all need the support. So Circle is really rooted in collaboration and connection. And really in Circle we co-create. So it's this beautiful weaving of sort of the threads of all of our separate lives into this sort of beautiful fabric, which creates Circle and creates connection and belonging. So that's how I think of it. Um, when we sit in Circle, we not only have the opportunity to transform ourselves, but we have the opportunity to transform others. So I hosted a Circle on Monday night, and a woman came who has been saying she was going to come for many, many, many months, and then it's just never worked out. And she showed up on Monday. And this beautiful woman told her story in the most beautiful way, landed with somebody else who had a very similar story. They're now connected and they're having this connection, right? So it's absolutely meant to be that those particular two women came on this particular day. I mean, it's just the magic that happens in Circle, right? You can't predict that. Like, I do the same thing every month. Some people come, some people don't. Like, and so to see that really that transformation that comes as a result of showing up. That's one of the things I say in my Circle is we honor each other for showing up not only for yourself and creating space for yourself to sit in stillness and to be held and to be a part of honoring your own journey. Also showing up for your sisters, right? Showing up because we can't have a Circle, right? If there's a break, we need every person to show up in the Circle. If there's a break, we don't have a Circle. And so it's really important to me to honor women for showing up, not only for themselves, but also for their sisters. So, um, it's, yeah, I think it's really creating the pause where we're in society now that's moving faster and faster every day, right? It's noisier and noisier every day. There's less stillness. There's less quiet. And unfortunately, in my estimation, coupled with that is there's more and more and more trauma, right? Like there's micro traumas, there's little T's, there's big T's, there's all these things sort of happening to us, for us, with us, and our sisters. And so it increases even more for me the importance of having that held space and having that sacred space, right? Like if I just take one thing and I just think about COVID and the collective impact of it on us, like as a society, like I look at my kids, right? That like essentially weren't in school for a year and how that impacted them at different ages, and how these different things impacted us as healthcare workers and all of these things. Like those are all things that need to be unpacked. And I think the bulk of us don't have great spaces to unpack some of those things. And so that's really the vision of what we do in Circle. It's very egalitarian, right? Like we all sit at the same level. Nobody's higher than anybody else, right? I think of patriarchy, which is like a triangle, right? You got a few at the top, whole lot of us at the bottom. Then when you think of Circle, it's like everybody is sitting at the same level. Everybody's voice is equal. Everybody's story matters just as much as the story of the sister next to them. And that's kind of also the beauty of the magic of it is you never know what the story is going to be and who it's going to impact. But because there's no authority, we can just let it unfold and let the magic unfold. And really in Circle for me, that's where I was able to reclaim my voice. I had absolutely lost my voice and I had absolutely lost my power. And most of all, I had disconnected from my internal wisdom. So my belief, or when I coach people and when we work in Circle, is that we have our own medicine. Like we all have everything we need within us. And where we need support is to tap into that. Where we need support is to peel the onion, right? And like take some of those layers off. And why am I so reactive? And why do I have this experience in my body of feeling triggered when this particular situation presents itself, right? And so it's really just creating this space to help people find their own answers. Like I don't ever profess to have anybody's answers. I can barely figure myself out. So it's helping people get to their own answers. So it's really where we kind of find our truth and reclaim our voice. And that creates freedom, right? That allows us to be silly and find our inner child and be wild women and, dance around and play a drum and, do an art project or sit quietly and do a meditation or do a visualization together or share with vulnerable, heartfelt sharing. But all of those shared experiences is what helps create community and helps us to all grow stronger collectively. So, um, as you can see, I'm very passionate about this subject and I love it, love it, love it very much. So the way that I run my um, life, I should say, but really the way I run Emerging Hearts Collective is really around this idea of cycles and themes, right? So as women, we have this superpower of understanding cycling and understanding themes. And so we have a monthly sister circle gathering, which is like a drop in. It's different every month. It's different women every month. It tends to be a bigger circle. That is follows the themes in nature, what's happening in nature, and how that's reflected in our bodies, how that's reflected in our hearts, right? So at the circle that I was sharing about on Monday, we talked about this magic of winter, right? And how do we reflect what's happening in nature, which is the earth looks dormant and quiet and things look dead on the outside, but there is like all this activity. There's all this germinating happening under the soil, and all this richness is really happening in the fertile soil below. And how is that reflected in our bodies? What are the things that we're metabolizing from the year past? So that then what are we going to plant the seeds for that are going to blossom in the spring? Or what are we going to plant the seeds for in the fall that then are going to, or in the spring that are then going to blossom in the fall? So it's really this exercise in honoring the shifting seasons so that we can receive the full medicine of the change. We have to, nature knows, right? We fight it, right? We want to keep our lights on till midnight. I'm the worst offender, right? Like we don't, well, oh, it's getting dark earlier, so I'm going to go to sleep earlier, like we would if we were more connected in with nature. So it's creating the space to really recognize how we're transforming, just like the earth is transforming right underneath us. And so winter is this dark, cold time of the year. The trees are bare. It's very stark, right? And so everything seems dampened. I love it like I live on a busy street and I can always tell when it snowed because there's not like car noise. Like it's all very muted because people are driving slower. And it's like without even looking at the window, I know it snowed because I can tell people are moving more slowly. People aren't out walking their dogs first thing in the morning. Cars aren't zooming by first thing in the morning. Um, and I love that, but there's a special stillness that happens in the winter, right? Like the hustle and bustle slows down. Now, this 2 weeks, notwithstanding with Christmas and all, but for the most part, if we think of winter as, December, January, February, there is a slowing. So it's really honoring the potency of the energy that's happening during the winter around rest and around hibernation, around a sort of going in and looking at the lessons learned, looking at our shadow side, understanding how we're changing and how we're growing and how that's preparing us for the shift of the seasons into the spring. So so we run with so in the monthly circle, we run really with a nature theme, and then all of my offerings are really following the seasons. And then we have a monthly gathering that's very fluid and changes a little bit every month based on the theme and who shows up and how that looks and the activities. And then I also run smaller circle series around rites of passage. So this would be a smaller group of women in a committed container. We might meet every Monday for 12 weeks or every Wednesday for 8 weeks or something. And those circles also follow a theme. So sort of as it relates to this particular group. So it's all really built on it's really built on what is our energetic output and how is that matched for what we're doing in our environment. So we can really tap into that So as we're moving through things like past experience around trauma, what's coming up in our bodies, we can recognize that we have this external support system as well, of the cycling of our bodies, the cycling of nature, like the cycling of seasons, all of these things. So we really do that in our circle series that are sort of all built around rites of passage and sort of the next phase and the next chapter and where have we been and where are we going. So for example, one of the things I just want to share about is a circle that I'm running right now, which is really amazing. And it's called the Wise Woman Transformative Experience. And so this is a place where we take all the hard-earned wisdom, right, and alchemize that hard-earned wisdom to really like so I always say we take all the yuck, we compost it up so that then we can, use that to fertilize the next chapter and fertilize the flowers and the plants and all of these beautiful things that we're creating. So it's like taking whether it's illness or whether it's burnout or whether it's resentment in relationship, whatever it is, figure out how we got there. What's our story? What's our patterning around that? What's our trauma? Where is that rooted? How is that rooted and how has that become our way in the world? Alchemizing that, composting that through activities, exercises, learnings, sharing, hearing other people's stories, ritual, ceremony, and then alchemizing that into what is next? How do I want my life to look? What is my passion? What are my joys? How do I take care of myself? How do I reignite and refine this woman that I know I am inside? Because what happens is like, I know I can speak for my own life, it's the job and the kid and another kid and a marriage and a divorce and another husband and my parents, my aging parents, and like, I'm just getting more and more and more weighed down. And for me, it was really through coaching and through circle that those things started to lift off. And yes, I have responsibilities. Yes, like there's still a lot there, but I can understand how I move through those and I can show up in a way to all of my responsibilities that I can show up and be the way I want to be. Whereas I used to just be human doing. Doing. Give me a list. I love a good list. Like I will bang everything off my list, but I paid no attention to who I was being in the world. And so for me, I was really able to shift through coaching and through circle and through really paying attention. I was able, and working through some of my own stuff, I was able to shift into being in the world in a way that feels really good and feels really authentic and feels really sincere and feels like I can have relationships and build a life that looks and matches my heart, because I had such a big conflict with like, this is who I am in the world. And now I'm like, this is who I'm being versus this is what I'm doing. And so I work a lot with women around that. My clients tend to be, you know, high powered women that are like in this conflict, right? Of trying to understand, but why am I so conflicted? Everything should be great, right? That's the heroine's journey. We get the thing, we do all the things we're supposed to do. And then we get to the top of the mountain and we're like, and like, what's the next thing, right? So that's the heroine's journey. And then we have to dive into the volcano, to that dark, juicy, fertile area to do this work, to understand who it is that we are, who we're being, not what we're doing, but who we're being. So that's one of the things that we really tap into in the Wise Woman series, which is about this idea of like, why do we care for our bodies? Like, what are our core values? What are our guiding principles that really support us in cultivating a life that feels really good? It doesn't feel conflicted, cultivating a life that feels really aligned. And so, I've just learned through, through the work with so many women that a lot of us are pretty scared and pretty resentful and pretty unhappy, whether it's wherever that's rooted in, we're running our patterns. Like that's what we do, is we run our patterns until we pause and we're like, oh, I can witness myself, I can witness this pattern. And then we can really change that pattern, right? And move out of the dark discomfort and really move into empowerment and really move into joy. And that, of course, is where we all want to live, right? And so for me, the rite of passage thing is around taking the pause. So I work with young girls around first menstruation and how that looks and how they can take their knowledge about their body and their cycle and use that for good, right? Like I'm running a business. Well, for me, I plan my meetings and to be out in the world when I know, like when my cycle is giving me that energy. When I'm in the energy of like, oh, I just want to be in my bed, like I'm not scheduling meetings for that time because like, I'm a mess and I don't want to see anybody. And I definitely don't want to get out of my jammy pants. So, like tapping into that superpower for female creativity, right? Like our creativity and our ability to connect and create community. I mean, that's what women have always done, and it's what women will always do. It's just over time we've kind of gotten away from doing it doing it as part of our lives. It becomes a thing you do. You go to a retreat, you go to a thing, right? But we don't have it built into our lives as much. So I work a lot in the feminine freedom method, which is just a method of tapping into your story, right? Figuring out your trauma. Like this is happening to me. I'm getting this messenger. I was working with a woman yesterday. She was super triggered. We were working through that once she was able to sort of somatically release a little bit of what was happening with her body and her trauma. And then we sort of tapped into like, what is the message, right? So this person is the messenger. This is the message that you're getting. And then through the feminine freedom method, we were able to sort of wind back into, does this remind you of? When did you have this experience before? And so for this woman, her example was she was having a really triggering experience with an ex-husband's wife. And what she came up with was this experience was really rooted in an experience that she had had with an older brother when she was a tiny, tiny girl. And so we really worked through connecting the dots of like, this was the impact of this experience, and this is why this feels so threatening now. And we worked a lot with like, what's happening in your body? Like, how is this showing up for you? Um, how do we categorize it? Like, what is the pattern? What is your gut telling you to do? Like, she's a leaving pattern. Like, she just wants to beat. She doesn't want to engage, but yet she's in a situation where she has to engage. It's an issue around one of her children, and like how to navigate that. But I think, and how to navigate it, and then also how to release it, right? So releasing that story, releasing that trauma out of the body, giving a new name and a new sound or movement or whatever it is to the new story. And then standing in your power in the new story, standing in your power in your new statement, in your new affirmation, and really releasing that limited belief and that physical response that comes with it. So, you get to see people bring in their competent protector, right? Like it's who that person that maybe should have stood up for her when she was little, or someone in her life now that she can go to for support, or she knows she can lean on. Like being able to watch women identify new actions and new ways to respond through dressing the old story. And it can be ugly, right? Like it can be ugly to be like, it was my older brother spitting in my face and like over and over, and he thought it was so funny, and like that's really ugly to work through. But the freedom that comes from working through that, so then you no longer have this trigger and this messenger can carry a different message for you, is so wild. It's so powerful, and it's so amazing to get to see people actually look lighter and sit up taller and feel stronger. We just did an exercise in circle a couple of weeks ago in the Wise Woman experience around taking up space, claiming your space and claiming your power and claiming your affirmation. And nobody wanted to do it. And I told them, you will not die. It will be okay. Like I did this at a retreat. Yes, it's really hard. I'm going to go first. This is how we're going to do it. And I led by example, but it's not something we do, right? Like another exercise we do is we will close our circles with a brag, a gratitude, and a desire. how many places in your life do you get to brag about being an amazing woman, right? We don't do that. That's frowned upon. Well, who does she think she is, bragging about what she does, right? Like, we don't do that very well for each other and for ourselves. And then a gratitude, right? To just like ground that in of like, oh, like things aren't perfect, but I have a lot of things to be grateful for. And then a desire, like, what is your ask? What do you want the world to bring you? What do you want your sisters to bring you? I have seen over and over and over with this exercise, the desires being filled. It's like, I really need a new space to hold circle. And 2 days later, someone who heard me say that is like, got a twice removed connection of someone who's got a space that they're willing to give me to do my circle for free. I mean, it's like wild. It's wild, like dog sitters and trips, and like all sorts of wild things. A marriage therapist, like, I mean, it's wild. So to just be able to sit in women and to sit in circle with women and to be able to see them coming into their power and see the magic that to see individual women, but also women collectively be able to tap into their own magic is just an experience that I'm so grateful for. Like, it's an experience I've been so grateful for people to be willing to do this with me, whether I'm facilitating or whether I'm, like just partnering in a circle with other women. It's just absolutely amazing to see people show up without all the stuff, right? Like to be able to show up without being under that 1,000 pounds of all the other stuff, all the responsibility and all the other stuff. So yeah, it's such an honor. I just love it so much. And I find what often will happen is that I work, I women will experience circle and they'll start to unpack some things, and then we'll move into a one-on-one coaching relationship or coaching container just to really create a space for them to dig in, to their specific brand of, experience, trauma, wisdom, learning, whatever it is. And then occasionally group spaces. The magic of circle is we don't give feedback. We don't give advice. We don't coach. We just hold space. And that's real uncomfortable for a lot of people to not get feedback, to not give feedback. But what it does is it frees us all up to just listen. Not just, but to focus and actively listen, because you don't have to think of what you're going to say. Person speaking doesn't have to think of what they're going to need, what they are going to feel the responses. And so that helps people get into this vulnerable place and be able to start to unpack stuff. But what I find often happens is once people have started doing that work, then they really want to get into more of a one-on-one relationship to dive in more deeply about their specific stuff. So then I also will do one-on-one or group coaching spaces where we give a lot of feedback. There's a lot of coaching and there's a lot of sort of um, guiding people to their own answers, certainly, which that looks different than circle like looks, but it's really through the support group that I run and the circles that I run and this circle series that I run, and then one-on-one and group coaching. It's like really through these different channels where we can bring in different modalities and we can bring in different somatic experiences and really move the trauma through the body and really move the patterning through the body and look at why it's there and honor it and say thank you very much, you got to go. Yeah, go.
Can you make a distinction between a support group and a women's circle?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I run a pregnancy and new parents, and I call it support circle because I can't let circle go. Support group. It's a support group. It runs like a support group. People show up. We sit in a circle on the floor. We introduce ourselves. We kind of say, what's on your heart today that you need to talk about? If nobody's talking, I have a theme. So I might say, relationship with your partner, like what's happening with that. And then we might all dive into that. As opposed to us, and people might say, oh, I had that too. Oh, yes, I had that experience. That was really hard for me. Oh, my mother-in-law did that too. That could be the sort of vibe of a support group. It's really unstructured. It is or arises really organically. Typically it's drop in. So you'll have different groupings of people. For this particular support group that I run, and this is a little different. I've been running support groups for many, many years, but this is a little bit different because I have pregnant women and I have new moms. So they're in different places in the journey. One of the things that I think often sort of defines support groups is people are sort of in the same place in life. Often, like maybe you have a grief group, right? So everybody is dealing with some aspect of grief. So, as opposed to a circle, which is structured. Circle, the way I run circles, they're quite structured. We kind of have a series of activities and exercises that we're moving through. We're not offering feedback directly. If I thought, well, I'm really connecting with you, Cheryl, like your story is my story, I might come to you after circle and say, like, I would love to connect with you. Do you want to go have coffee? We're not going to do that in the circle. Like if you share a story, I'm not going to say, oh yes, I had that too, and we're not going to have a back and forth in the circle. So I would say that number one difference is sort of the structure and then the consistency, right? So like circles are run with a theme, they run with more of an agenda. There's a lot more structure. There's no feedback thing, as opposed to a support group is really built on feedback and really built on those who have gone before, really guiding those who are coming and moving through now and quite unstructured. I'd say those are the primary differences.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Well, what else? I think that's kind of my feel. I don't know. All my stickies that are sitting here with that say things on them seem to be pretty much covered. So, just actually one more thing. I thought of as I picked up that sticky. The thing I love about Circle is we address so many of these things where we see promise, right? We address movement, like we dance or we drum or we do yoga or we do whatever. We address like the spiritual aspect. We have a social component, like we might do a potluck before, or we might do cookies after, and we always have chocolate in every circle. That's always a thing. But like we really address like so many of these components of wellness and health and social needs and spirituality. And I just find that it's really the sort of comprehensive nature that for one person, might really be in movement where they can release. And for someone else, it really might be in pouring your guts out in a really heartfelt sharing. And for somebody else, it might be meditation to soft, gentle music because they just don't have a place to pause. And that may elicit a lot of emotion. But I feel like sort of there's a little something for everyone. And I always say to people, I have deep roots in 12-step work. And I always say to people, like a good 12-stepper, like take what you like and leave the rest. Like if something is working for you, beautiful. If something doesn't work for you, beautiful. But I challenge you, if you're uncomfortable, to push your edges of vulnerability. Because what I find is that in the circle is where we get a practice. We get a practice showing up who we want to be. We get a practice showing up and being kind and being compassionate. The foundation I run my circles on is I run BRAVE circles. So that's an acronym for bold, responsible, authentic, vulnerable, and empathetic. So we're all coming with those are the ground rules. It's like that's what we're coming with. And the more we come with that, the more we can play full out and push our edges of vulnerability. I have a woman and she says, I don't dance. I'm not doing it. I don't dance. I don't move. My body hurts. I'm 1,000 years old. I'm not doing it. She has not gotten up yet, but she does a little move, a little moving like in her seat. And so like that's shifting, right? Like she pushed her edges of vulnerability to say, this is a thing I don't do. Try it a little. Right. And in circle, we get a practice. Like she's not probably going to lead the dance party next time, but like she might come and participate. Like there being dance on the agenda might not turn her away now. So like that's a shift, right? That's a shift that feels really valuable. So in circle, we get a practice. So we get to practice who we want to be in the world and have the safety to know that it's going to be just fine. Like it's going to be just fine. We're going to do the hard thing. We're going to say the hard thing. We're going to be messy. I mean, that's my whole thing. I show up real messy, and that leads the way for people to show up in their own story and in their own mess.
I have a question.
Yeah, Donna.
I know a woman who's quite alone, and she has tried to go to different circles and activities and not felt connected, because her family life with her mother and sister are really out of whack. And I just don't know if something like this would be suitable for her. It seems like it would, and the trauma level of not having them understand where she is and how she wants to. She always wants to try to bring them into completion to the point that they can say, "Oh, we get it, and we are sorry, and really, we finally do understand." But she's worked for numerous decades and not had that happen. So she goes back and forth trying to connect and then say, "No, I can't connect." And I just wonder how this kind of circle might serve her.
Yeah, I love that. I love that she has you in her life. Like, who's thinking about her.
I'm not quite sure how to serve her because I
Yeah.
have never experienced the level of trauma
Yeah.
that she has experienced. And so I don't have a context for
Mhm.
her. And so when I've offered, like, well, what about, just because, it's like, well, you're really just wanting to offer a suggestion for me to solve this, and I just need to be heard.
Mhm.
But it's what I see is it's the same story every time, and there's not a place that she goes where it's like, oh my gosh, I do have a choice from the inside out about who I am. And it's, I really feel not in trauma informed because of that. It's like, oh, I don't know how that particular brain function of, I've had my own amygdala hijacks, I don't, that's not, I'm not naive about that. But the depth of the trauma relative to the amygdala hijack and the sorrow of pretty much living her life alone and having to move from various homes to rent rooms because her relationships with the hosts go right. You know what I mean? It's or the
Mhm.
renting family. It's really complex, and I just don't know where to send her. And I do think of her and wonder. So I really appreciate your input on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what just keeps coming up for me is this idea of visibility,
Mm.
right? Like, how can you just be held and seen when nobody's trying to fix you, right?
Yeah,
Like, that was for me. Like, if I had one more person tell me what I should do, I was gonna
yeah,
snap,
yeah. That's how.
right? Like, I don't want to do the things. I want someone to just hear me and honor my experience, right? Like, that was really a big shift for me. So of course, right? Like we all move through our sorrow and grief and trauma at our own pace and in our own way. But I do wonder if there's something for this particular woman around like just being held and being visible and like belonging, whatever your story is. Like maybe
Yeah,
there's just something around you. You can just belong. Like it doesn't have to be based on your story or what did or what didn't. Like maybe you just can be a part of it, and that's enough. I wonder.
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
It's a complex. I will share her, your group with her,
That would be
and
wonderful. Yeah.
I may come to learn how this particular context of having to struggle and move forward, because I have to admit, yes, I I do like to focus on, wow, yes, I hear you, and now that you've been heard, what can you do next? And I don't want it to be a fixer rescuer archetype that I come from, but I do know that all of the women that I've had the pleasure of connecting with over the last 8 years since I've been in Ben, that is our paradigm. You
Yes.
know what I mean? We witness each other, and then we witness progress, and we witness courage, and we witness celebration, and we witnessed grace. And so I do not know women whose, I call it a brainwave situation, where they literally cannot get out of the track, because maybe none of us had that depth of trauma, or maybe we did, but we did go, oh my gosh, it just, one day I just landed and I got it, that I'm okay regardless of my past. So anyway, I'll learn
And
more.
I always think of in those type of situations, like I just never know who's going to be the messenger. Sometimes I think, oh, these two ladies are really going to connect. It's going to be amazing. Sometimes I can't even imagine who's going to connect. And someone says, oh, this person, everything she said landed with me. And so I wonder if there's something like that too. It's like maybe we just don't know who her messenger is. And maybe we don't know if there's another way for her. Like maybe this is her story right now. And maybe that's okay. Like maybe it's just supporting in whatever this is. Or maybe there's the thing she hears and it changes, or there's an experience that helps move the energy, right? And move it through her body. And then there's work in feminine freedom method, or there's work around this patterning. I don't know. We just never know. And so I'm, of course, I'm like, it's your friend and bring your friend and come and we do the thing. And then you see what lands, right? Like that's how I found what lives for me right now. And it wasn't the same thing that lived for me 10 years ago or 20 years
Right.
ago, because I've changed, my story has changed, my body has changed. So yeah,
Good.
I wish there was a simple answer, but man, there sure isn't.
Okay, that's good. And on your website is the calendar of events?
Yes, the
Okay.
calendar is there. I think I'm scheduled through mid 2024. And then I'm just putting my phone number in the chat. It's the
Oh, I love
easiest
it.
way to get a hold of me. If you know, text or call or whatever, that's a good way too. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. And that's, I think, like for me, and I think for many, you were talking about like where we used to gather and things, and then the modern society kind of took that away. And so just trying stuff, I think, a lot of times, and if we, it's hard, because like that wasn't part of my growing up, with groups or anything. And then I did someone suggested with a eating and mindfulness, and that kind of doing a group, and that made me realize like there was more things common, and it was a mixture of age groups. It was small, but it was a mixture, and that kind of started opening up my eyes. I think instead of just being, we're so in the head analytical, and like we're supposed to fix ourselves and all that. So and that may be something too, Donna, for this lady, is just if she can just try stuff. And that's sometimes really the hardest thing too, is to kind of do that. And
Yeah.
you probably see that, Willow, a lot with some of the people that drop in, I would think.
Absolutely. People drop in and then they drop out and then they drop back in, and it's a time of year and do we shift the time and all of that. But I wanted to just acknowledge that piece because that's been a huge piece for me. Like I have been an intellectual professional person and I have lived neck up most of my life. And only, through these experiences and circle and around trauma work have I figured out getting in my body. I figured out like maybe it's not just sitting in meditation, like maybe it's dancing, and maybe it's, maybe it's some of these other outlets. But as someone who's struggled with my weight my whole life, like that's not really been a really super safe, good space for me. So learning that like that's a safe, good space, and that I always feel better when I can move the energy through my body, always like, and so just like I would have not known that if I hadn't just tried it. If I hadn't pushed that edge of vulnerability and said, like, I am super uncomfortable doing this, but like I'm gonna try it. And then got, to reap the rewards of trying the new thing and being physical and being in my body and understanding how changes things, right? Whether it's breath work or drumming or whatever the heck it is, going for a walk, right? All those things. So yeah, thanks for saying that.
Willow, Stanya has a question.
What's up?
Hey, ladies,
Hi.
I'm not sure how I sound. I am dancing with some natural detox. I think whatever we would call it, cold or flu or whatever. So, and actually, I was clearly attracted to your talk about it, seeing that circle, women's circle. And last 2-3 years, I was spent a lot of time in Europe because of my family. Anyhow, but that helped me clarify, I feel, my role in this lifetime or whatever. And one of those things is really circle dancing. In the circles, in my culture, in old times, women had made a circle, inner circle, dancing counterclockwise, and men made circle around them, dancing clockwise. And that was really tightening up community. It was nothing sexual, absolutely, because women were with women always until it was really mating or I don't know, dancing or whatever we would call it. Like when people like each other, young people and or married people. But the core of society was this circle dancing. So I wonder if I'm looking for people around here to do that, and I will do my best to do it with my community where I belong now. I am doing my best to get them get up at least, and tomorrow we have a party, and I was planning to do line dancing, but line dancing still it is just line. It is so lineal, just in the name, line dancing. We are supposed to dance in the circles and get energy really going, and it will pump up our hearts. And what I did get from today, thank you for talking about it. I don't work with trauma, or I didn't encounter it kind of like with other people. I can imagine I have a bunch of my own. But with your talk, Willow, I feel like actually trauma is just cracking that wall around our hearts. How many people has heart issues? Not mentioning about recent couple of years events. And I feel that dancing plus singing, we gave away our voice. We did not lose it. We gave consent to somebody else to use our voice and speak for us. And we feel, okay, I don't have to say anything. I voted, whatever it is, or even in the family. So it is about getting our voice back, which I trust has to do as well to pick up courage, which if any of you know about David Hawkins, map of consciousness, courage 200. I had it not explained. One guy in Czech Republic, he described it as when you have a building that 200 is on the ground level. Everything under 200 are rooms underground. Everything above 200 is above the ground. So you have to have a courage, which again resonate with something what I felt and told my clients. I feel like the biggest courage is to get born. Now I understand it. So kids, babies, they get on that 200. And then by programming or experiences or protection of parents, they mean well for us, but they will kind of push us under the ground, stay safe. And how many will make it above the ground? So the courage to be heard and to be seen. So for me, I feel it is singing from the heart and everybody. Of course, and health issues, really, America is in quite poor shape. And I feel because people don't dance and dancing together, that is really having fun together. It will get our radiant circuits going. We get healthy, not only personally, but as a healthy community. So all that together, and I'm really grateful I am here. You all kind of look like around that thing. So some of you I know from the past, some not. But now half of my life I focus now in Czech Republic as well, considering really spiritual state of things there. And my dream is as well to the power of our spirit, really how powerful our spirit is and what makes it powerful for you. Everybody has a different venue. Some people are Christians, go to church. Some people do whatever other stuff. Anything what works is good. And communicate it together and build it up together. I feel really times are coming and we better have a strong spirit and have a support around us. So thank you for this. I really feel, well, we all have traumas. There will be even more. But it is that like growing pains, I feel, or when somebody's working out with the weights. So it's actually breaking, cracking muscles and growing it bigger. So the same with that protection of our hearts to heal the trauma. So thank you for that. Really, trauma is a story. And in a long past ago, I had one lady, she almost began to scream at me, when you will drop your story? And I had no clue what she's talking about. Now I see that. So thank you. Thank you for giving me space, ladies, and forgive me if it was too long.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you
No.
just summed up the whole talk when you said the courage to be heard and seen. Like that's the whole thing. And you just distilled it down into that one sentence. I mean, that's really the
Thank
thing.
you.
So thank
Thank
you
you.
for that.
Laura?
No, it's interesting. I feel like I'm practicing in America. I feel much more courage here among you in different language than my native language. And then I have to take it, be heard and seen in between my own people, which for my own experience, it is much more challenging than between chosen people we do in our life, but being able to practice it really, it's uncomfortable. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Laura, you have a question.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to say, my name's Laura. I feel so honored to be here with all of you. I feel so grateful. And I don't know how I found this. Somehow I serendipitously found this talk and it's right on time. I just moved to Central Oregon. I have been super called to holding women's circles, women's space. I have a vision for it. It's very strong, but I would like to also be a part of a women's circle, because how can I think that I could facilitate and open a space like that without also being a part of one in some way? And so I'm reaching out, and I would love to reach out to you, Willow, for a follow-up. I feel very much connected to your vision and how you were talking about the cycles. So much of what you were talking about. The other bit of a piece that I have that's somehow connected to this is that I was licensed as a mental health counselor, but I left that work. I was very burnt out. And now returning, I have this vision for how I want to see my work to unfold. And much of the work that I did in the past was trauma work. But I want to be able to open women's spaces, specifically for the Latino community. So that's all I wanted to share. I feel so grateful for this space. I feel I jumped in and I was like, wow, like, look at all these women with this life experience. And I feel so honored to be a part of it and to hear you, and even just to be in the space, knowing that you care so much about us all healing. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would love to connect and collaborate. There's a theory that there's a tipping point of 1 million women's circles, that's when things start to change for us culturally. So let's do it.
Yeah, I feel like things are being, I felt very called to it. It's come through in different ways for me. We all need it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Willow has been very generous in sharing her phone number. And of course, again, the website is emergingheartscollective.com.
Yep.
And email is willow@emergingheartscollective. So please get in touch if you have additional questions or want to check out the circles or her coaching, or however else you might want to.
I assume you are in Bend?
I am in Bend, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And thank you, Willow, for today's talk.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
invite. I'm
Wonderful.
glad we finally did it. We've been chatting for a long time
Thank
about
you
doing
so
this talk,
much.
but
Really beautiful.
life is not allowed. So thank you all for listening and for an hour of your time. It's an absolute honor to get a with you ladies for an hour. So thank you.
Thanks, Willow.
Yes,
Thank you for connecting me with my friends, few, which I did not see for ages.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Stanya, stay on.
I will stay here. Mhm.
Okay.
Thank
Do I
you,
go?
ladies. Bye.
Hi, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.